It is no secret that Mesmer is one of the hardest classes to play in Guild Wars 2. Its playstyle is very unique, and I don't think I can think of another class in another MMORPG that plays similar to the Mesmer. So I wanted to make this guide for people who are thinking of trying it out. I love this class. I have always liked the archetype of an illusionist, someone who fights with guile and wit instead of strength and power. And I have never seen an illusionist properly implemented in a game before Guild Wars. In most games, the illusionist is the guy who casts invisibility or buffs his allies with blur images. But with Mesmer, ArenaNet made a really interesting approach to a mage-type character. Mesmer relies on tricks to fool enemies and turn their own power against them. To add to that, you could build your Mesmer like a spell sword, so I was sold from day one. So as an overview, let's take a look at the pros of a Mesmer. The Mesmer has a lot of useful utility skills, especially in jumping puzzles. It has powerful counters to specific tactics, so it has a lot of reflect. It has a lot of condition removal, so if your enemies rely on those, then you can be a real problem for them. Linked to that, in PvP, they can be the strongest confusion user. They can also be a solid generator of buffs, right? So, and it's not just buffing yourself, you can actually spread your buffs to your allies, so that's a definite support build. And they also have a lot of good survivability options. So with blink and invisibility and evasion, they just have a lot of options to keep them alive. Now, what are the weaknesses of the class? The Mesmer has low area of effect damage options. They can have a trouble dealing with multiple enemies at once. They can be a little dependent on their illusions. So if you're facing an enemy that can take out your illusions before you can do anything with them, that can leave you crippled. Some setups are complicated, and they do have some skills that have really high cooldowns. This does link in with their elite specialization of the Chronomancer. I'll talk about that later. And overall, it's just hard for them to match the damage of other classes. They can't match the burst potential of Thief or Warrior, and they can't sustain damages regularly as Guardian or Elementalist. Now, before you make your build, every Mesmer has one critical choice to make. Do you want to make your build a Shatter Build or an Illusion Build? Shatter Builds concentrates most of their damage on the Shatter mechanic of the Mesmer. They create illusions as fast as they can so they can blow them up as soon as they have a few. There are traits that can modify the Shatter, increasing their damage, applying confusion, decreasing the recharge time, or applying buffs or healing whenever they are used, so Shatter builds want to use their Shatter skills as much as they can. Some Shatter builds can go through all 4 or 5 Shatter skills in a few seconds. For Shatter builds, the recommended weapons are Scepter, Greatsword. Recommended offhand weapons are Pistol and Offhand Sword. Illusion builds create illusions and phantasms that they fight alongside. Illusions, while not having any significant damage, can have useful tricks like debuffs and condition damage. Phantasms can devastate your enemies, especially if they ignore them to focus on you. There are traits that can either give illusions more tricks and life, power up their damage, or give you stat increases and buffs while having them out. Illusion builds will typically never touch the Shatter skills, maybe only to finish off their enemies or provide crowd controls. For Illusion builds, recommended weapons are Staff and Sword. Recommended offhand weapons are Focus and Torch. Now, I wanted to make a special mention of the elite specialization of the Mesmers, the Chronomancers. Chronomancers can either be illusion builds or Shatter builds. Chronomancers have traits that can make illusions and phantasms persist after shattering, so building your illusions up to 3 would take less time and you can use another Shatter skill quickly. Chronomancers also have access to the Alacrity buff, which speeds up cooldowns. Useful for everyone, but especially for illusion builds. There are also a lot of tricks that can be done with Continuum Shift, and the shield weapon is pretty useful for both Shatter and Illusion builds. So don't be mindful of the specialization, you can incorporate it into any build should you choose to go Chronomancer. Well, I hope this has been helpful. Mesmer has always been an unpopular pick, but there are Mesmer plays that can turn the tide of battle. Hopefully this guide helps you figure out what kind of Mesmer you want to make. Thanks for watching!